This is Charter Local Edition. Brad Pomerance here in the Inland Empire, joined by Carey Davis, the mayor of the city of San Bernardino. And guess what? Election day is coming up, and there are a few measures on the ballot in San Bernardino, which I think they're worthy to discuss because of the implications they have, not just for San Bernardino, but the entire region, and really, in my mind, are instructive of what many cities are facing.
They really are.
Yeah.
Measure L.
Yeah, let's talk about Measure L. We can start with that.
Measure L is an opportunity for the city to continue its road down the road to improvement and to making the city a much more modernized city government.
And let's remind our viewers that San Bernardino is coming out of bankruptcy. It's going well. I know that even now the city's facing a surplus, which is really nice to hear and see. But you're looking to modernize the city government.
Right. This new charter really adopts those very similar features and provisions of most cities of our size throughout the state of California.
Right. I want to talk about some of the highlights. And like I indicated before, a lot of what you're doing is being adopted by cities throughout the state or being considered. So let's talk about elections. How do the voters of San Bernardino elect their mayor and city council today?
So our election cycle is off the general election, so we are on odd years. So those odd years really result in a lower voter turnout. And so
that's an understatement.
And so, for instance, with the general election, we see a much larger voter turnout. And so you really get more participation and engagement. And so with that, additionally, would then be a reduction in costs, because then we're not having elections also with the general election like we do now, but we would also then eliminate those elections that would be on odd years. So there's really a savings and a better voter turnout.
And when you say off cycle, you mean off cycle. You don't mean midterm elections, meaning in odd years, so 2013, 2017. There are times where the only election on the ballot will be for city elected officials.
Correct, or a city measure.
And what's remarkable to me is that on a day-to-day basis, we are so much more impacted by the actions of our cities and our counties than our state and our nation. And yet, voters still seem to be so focused on these major mega elections.
And that's why it would make sense to be able to tie in with that schedule of elections.
I want to ask also about for whom the voters are electing. Currently in the city of San Bernardino, the voters elect mayor independently, directly, city council, as well as city attorney and city clerk, is that right?
Correct.
You're looking to change the model with regard to city attorney and city clerk.
Most cities also appoint their city attorneys and their city clerks.
Right.
That is a best practice. Most cities throughout the state of California have adopted that, and it works very well. And so that's the same change that we're also incorporating into our new charter.
I noticed that larger cities will often elect their city attorney. Los Angeles, Long Beach elects two, a prosecutor and a city attorney for civil matters. You know, for our viewers statewide, I would mention the prior city attorney was somewhat controversial. And so I'm wondering, is it best practice or is this driven by a bad taste because of a prior city attorney?
Well, no, it really is best practice because the city attorney, city clerk's office, their support functions and roles. And so in order for them to have that focus on policies that are set by the city council, then you would want them to be appointed. Otherwise, if they're elected, they have their own agenda potentially, and they end up becoming political agents to be able to then identify where they can draw their power base from.
I know that recently San Bernardino, as a way to save money, contracted out its garbage, is that right?
Correct.
But there are other ways to save money, and you can do that simply through your charter and charter reform. And it may seem a bit mundane, but it really is important, and it's how you bill for sewer services versus water services.
Well, currently, one of the other changes in our new charter would allow for the consolidation. Our water department, which runs under a separate board, it also has its own delivery, it does the water delivery, and it's also in charge of water treatment. But our collection system is under Public Works. So this would consolidate that.
Right.
So all of that water delivery, water collection, and water treatment would be under one department.
There's also a measure which has caused tremendous controversy, and that's how much public service officers are paid and how their pay compares to other cities. It's known as Measure 186.
Correct.
Tell us about that and the potential for reform for that.
Well, so you saw when the city was in bankruptcy, we
Right.
needed the ability to be able to adjust salaries and not, in some cases to hold them and not increase them. Section 186 required that we compared our wages with those of other cities like Irvine, cities with much larger median incomes. And so as a result of that, we ended up having to increase those salaries for both public safety, fire, and police department.
So that would change or repeal essentially 186.
Correct. It's not a provision that would currently be rewritten into the new charter.
I want to talk about 3 other measures that are on the ballot. Measures NONP.
Let's do that.
Let's do that. And like many cities, there are desires to more affirmatively address the question of marijuana sales. Upland has a measure, also in San Bernardino County, and now San Bernardino does. NONP would essentially repeal a ban on dispensaries and grows. N and O were presented by outside entities, P by the city. Talk to us more about these.
Thank you. So all 3 of those, as you mentioned, would eliminate and repeal the city's current ban on all of those marijuana-related activities. The state also has a proposition, you know, Proposition 64. The ban in our city is a good ban. It has allowed the city to be able to go after illegal. We see that in the case of, for instance, Colorado, when they put in place the legalization of recreational marijuana, also in Washington, the adverse effects and harm as a result of that legalization really outpaces and outweighs the monetary benefit that comes from taxing. So we feel that, that in the city that we are really like the other cities. In the county has maintained their ban. They realize that there's much more risk with higher levels of traffic accidents, the impact that it has on youth, encouraging our students to then essentially break the law because it still is a federal scheduled drug.
Right.
So you have a federal law that you're encouraging people to break.
The federal government does seem to be easing a bit on that question, but put that aside for a moment.
Although it depends on the city. For instance, in Colorado, the DEA will come in and is working with them to eliminate those that are coming in illegally.
But you know, the Ninth Circuit recently ruled that, and that's only for the Ninth Circuit, not Colorado, that if there's a state law and you comply with the state law, the Fed should not be spending money to claim a violation of federal law.
But that's so long as they do meet the criteria.
True.
Based on the Department of Justice's memo, the Cole memo that says we're not going to come in if these criteria are met. But in the case of Colorado, they're not being met, and they don't see that they're keeping out the gangs and the cartels.
I hear you, believe me. The question, though, is, like you said, you have Prop 64 on the ballot. Current polling has it running away, over 60% support, likely to pass. Let's just, for argument's sake, give me that. NLNP, let's just presume they don't pass, and so the repeal remains. Now you have people that can legally use marijuana. They can't get it in San Bernardino. They got to drive somewhere else to get it. They get stoned elsewhere, then they drive back into the city. Would it not be wise to at least give them an outlet to buy marijuana so they don't have to drive into LA County and then come home?
But the reverse of that is, if it passes in San Bernardino, then they would be getting their supply there and still getting on the road because other communities don't have it. So the reverse really applies.
I hear you. It's a tricky issue. Let's come back and talk after November, because I want to really get into this issue. It's critically important to see what happens.
Be happy
to.
Thank you.
His name is Carey Davis. He is the mayor of the city of San Bernardino. My name is Brad Pomerance, coming to you from the Inland Empire on Charter Local Edition.